Question 1. A financial services organization's critical payment processing system has been rendered inoperable due to a widespread power grid failure. The business continuity plan has been invoked, and the recovery team is working to restore services. As an auditor evaluating the effectiveness of the business continuity management system, which type of testing exercise would provide the most direct and reliable evidence that the organization can achieve its stated recovery time objectives for transaction processing and maintain data integrity within its recovery point objectives during such an incident? Option A. A functional exercise where specific components of the recovery infrastructure are tested in isolation without a full end-to-end scenario. Option B. A full-scale exercise that requires the physical relocation of staff to a disaster recovery site and the complete activation of all critical business functions. Option C. A simulation exercise involving the recovery team using their documented procedures and testing the failover to the alternate processing site with a subset of live transaction data. Option D. A tabletop exercise where the recovery team discusses their roles and responsibilities in response to the outage scenario without actual system interaction. Correct answer is C. A simulation exercise involving the recovery team using their documented procedures and testing the failover to the alternate processing site with a subset of live transaction data. Explanation. The scenario describes a situation where a business continuity plan, BCP, has been activated due to a critical infrastructure failure affecting a financial institution. The primary objective of a business continuity strategy is to maintain essential business functions at a predefined recovery time objective, RTO, and recovery point objective, RPO. When assessing the effectiveness of the response, an auditor would look for evidence that the activated BCP directly addressed the critical business functions identified in the Business Impact Analysis, BIA, and that the recovery strategies implemented were capable of achieving the established RTO and RPO. Specifically, for a financial institution, the ability to process transactions and maintain customer access to funds within specified timeframes is paramount. A tabletop exercise, while useful for discussing roles and responsibilities, typically does not involve actual system activation or data restoration. Thus, it would not provide direct evidence of the operational capability to meet RTO/RPO for transaction processing. A simulation exercise, however, involves a more hands-on approach where participants work through a scenario using their actual plans and potentially some simulated systems or data, allowing for a more realistic assessment of the BCP's operational effectiveness. A full-scale exercise would involve the actual activation of recovery sites and systems, which is the most comprehensive but also the most resource-intensive, given the need to verify the operational capability to process transactions and meet RTO/RPO in a realistic, yet manageable manner. A simulation exercise is the most appropriate method to validate the BCP's effectiveness in this context. This aligns with the auditor's role in verifying that the BCMS is implemented effectively and that the organization can indeed recover its critical functions. Question 2. During the document review phase of an ISO 22301/2019 audit, an auditor examines the organization's business continuity policy. Which of the following findings would represent the most significant deficiency concerning the policy's adherence to the standards requirements for establishing a BCMS? Option A. The policy is documented and communicated, but it lacks specific measurable objectives for incident response times. Option B. The policy statement includes a commitment to continual improvement but does not detail the specific mechanisms for achieving it. Option C. The policy is distributed electronically to all personnel but is not available in hard copy for all departments. Option D. The policy references general industry best practices but does not explicitly mention compliance with relevant national data privacy regulations. The correct answer is A. The policy is documented and communicated, but it lacks specific measurable objectives for incident response times. Explanation. The auditor's review of the business continuity policy during the document review phase is crucial for establishing the foundational commitment and direction for the entire business continuity management system, BCMS. According to ISO 22301/2019, specifically Clause 5. 2. The organization must establish, implement, and maintain a business continuity policy that is appropriate to the organization's purpose, context, and strategic objectives. This policy serves as the overarching statement of intent and principles guiding the BCMS. An auditor would assess if this policy is documented, communicated, and understood throughout the organization. The policy should also include a commitment to continual improvement of the BCMS and compliance with applicable requirements. The absence of a documented policy, or a policy that is not aligned with the organization's stated objectives or the standards requirements, indicates a significant nonconformity. The policy's effectiveness is not solely dependent on its existence, but on its integration into the organization's culture and decision-making processes. Therefore, verifying that the policy is current, relevant, and demonstrably supported by top management is a primary objective of the document review. Question 3. An auditor is reviewing the process for managing changes to a company's established business continuity management system, BCMS, following ISO 22301-2019. The company recently updated its critical IT infrastructure, which significantly altered its data recovery procedures. The auditor needs to assess whether the BCMS change management process adequately safeguards the system's overall integrity and effectiveness. What is the primary concern for the auditor in this scenario? Option A. Assessing whether the employees involved in IT infrastructure recovery were adequately trained on the new procedures. Option B. Verifying that the business continuity strategy for IT infrastructure was revalidated against the updated recovery procedures. Option C. Ensuring that the changes to the IT infrastructure were properly documented and that the BCMS documentation reflects these updates. Option D. Confirming that the impact of the IT infrastructure changes on the BCMS was evaluated and the system's integrity and intended outcomes were maintained. The correct answer is C. Ensuring that the changes to the IT infrastructure were properly documented and that the BCMS documentation reflects these updates. Explanation. The fundamental principle guiding the management of changes to a business continuity management system, BCMS, under ISO 22301-2019 is to ensure that such modifications do not inadvertently compromise the BCMS effectiveness or its ability to achieve its intended outcomes. Clause 8.1.3. Managing changes of the standard explicitly mandates that when changes are made to the BCMS, the organization must retain the integrity of the BCMS. This involves considering the purpose of the changes, the potential consequences of unintended consequences, the opportunity to implement improvements, and ensuring that the BCMS continues to achieve its intended results. An auditor would assess whether the organization has a documented process for evaluating the impact of proposed changes on the BCMS, including its policies, objectives, processes, and documentation. This evaluation should determine if the change necessitates a review of risk assessments, business impact analyses, or business continuity strategies. Furthermore, the auditor would verify that any approved changes are implemented in a controlled manner, with appropriate communication, training, and updated documentation. The ultimate goal is to maintain a robust and effective BCMS, even as it evolves to meet new organizational needs or external conditions. Therefore, the most critical consideration for an auditor when reviewing changes to the BCMS is the assurance that the integrity and effectiveness of the system are preserved throughout the modification process. Question 4. During an audit of a financial services organization's business continuity management system, an auditor is reviewing the findings of a recent business impact analysis, BIA. The BIA identified the core customer transaction processing function as critical, with a maximum tolerable period of disruption of 6 hours before severe financial and reputational damage would occur. The analysis also indicated that losing more than 30 minutes of transaction data would lead to significant reconciliation challenges and potential regulatory breaches. Based on these findings, which of the following statements accurately reflects the relationship between the BIA outputs and the subsequent establishment of recovery objectives for this function? Option A. The maximum tolerable period of disruption of 6 hours directly informs the recovery time objective, RTO, for the customer transaction processing function. Option B. The RTO for the customer transaction processing function should be set at 30 minutes to align with the maximum acceptable data loss identified in the BIA. Option C. The maximum acceptable data loss of 30 minutes dictates the recovery time objective RTO for the customer transaction processing function. Option D. The business impact analysis BIA primarily focuses on identifying potential threats, not on establishing specific recovery time or data loss parameters. The correct answer is A. The maximum tolerable period of disruption of 6 hours directly informs the recovery time objective RTO for the customer transaction processing function. Explanation: the business impact analysis BIA process within ISO 22301/2019 requires the identification and prioritization of business activities. Critical output of the BIA is the determination of recovery time objectives RTO and recovery point objectives RPO for these activities. The RTO defines the maximum acceptable downtime for an activity before significant negative impacts occur, while the RPO specifies the maximum acceptable data loss. When assessing the impact of an outage on a critical business function, such as customer order processing, an auditor needs to evaluate how quickly the function must be restored and how much data loss is tolerable to prevent unacceptable consequences. For instance, if an order processing system experiences an outage, the BIA would determine the threshold at which financial losses, reputational damage, or regulatory noncompliance become significant. This involves understanding the interdependencies between activities and the resources required to support them. The BIA's findings directly inform the selection of appropriate business continuity strategies. The maximum tolerable period of disruption for an activity, which is a key output of the BIA, directly informs the recovery time objective RTO. If an activity cannot tolerate disruption beyond 4 hours without causing significant harm, its RTO would be set at 4 hours. Similarly, the maximum acceptable data loss informs the recovery point objective RPO. If losing more than 1 hour of transaction data would be detrimental, the RPO would be 1 hour. Therefore, the maximum tolerable period of disruption is a direct input to establishing the RTO. Question 5. During an audit of a multinational corporation's BCMS, an auditor is reviewing evidence related to the integration of business continuity requirements into the product development lifecycle for a new financial services application. The organization claims to have embedded BC considerations from the initial design phase through to deployment. What specific type of evidence would most strongly demonstrate that business continuity risk assessment outcomes have been effectively translated into practical controls and design features within the application's development process, thereby satisfying the intent of ISO 22301/2019 clauses pertaining to operational planning and control and the integration of the BCMS? Option A. Employee training records showing attendance at general awareness sessions on business continuity without evidence of application to specific product development roles. Option B. Minutes from project steering committee meetings that mention the importance of business continuity without detailing specific technical or procedural implementations. Option C. Design specifications and architecture documents that explicitly detail the inclusion of redundant data storage, failover mechanisms, and disaster recovery capabilities, directly linked to identified business continuity risks and the business impact analysis. Option D. A post-incident review report from a previous, unrelated system failure that outlines lessons learned, but does not demonstrate proactive integration into current development practices. The correct answer is C. Design specifications and architecture documents that explicitly detail the inclusion of redundant data storage, failover mechanisms, and disaster recovery capabilities, directly linked to identified business continuity risks and the business impact analysis. Explanation: the auditor's role in evidence gathering and analysis under ISO 22301/2019 involves verifying the effectiveness of the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS. When examining the integration of business continuity requirements into organizational processes, a key area of focus is how the organization ensures that the BCMS is not a standalone activity, but is embedded within its day-to-day operations and strategic decision-making. This requires looking for evidence that business continuity considerations are present in project management, change management, procurement, and product development lifecycles. The auditor must assess whether business continuity risk assessments are conducted regularly and whether their outcomes inform the design and implementation of business continuity strategies and solutions. Furthermore, the auditor needs to verify that the organization has established clear responsibilities and authorities for business continuity activities, as outlined in Clause 5.3 of the standard. The effectiveness of training and awareness programs is also crucial, ensuring that personnel understand their roles and responsibilities during disruptive incidents. The analysis should lead to a conclusion about the conformity of the BCMS with the standard's requirements, specifically focusing on whether the organization has established, implemented, maintained, and continually improved a BCMS to protect against, reduce the likelihood of, prepare for, respond to, and recover from disruptive incidents. The auditor's objective is to gather sufficient appropriate audit evidence to support their findings regarding the BCMS effectiveness and conformity. This involves not just reviewing documented procedures, but also observing practices and interviewing personnel to gain a holistic understanding. Question 6. When auditing an organization's business continuity management system against ISO 22301-2019, what is the most critical linkage an auditor must verify to ensure the effectiveness of planned business continuity objectives and their intended achievement? Option A. The existence of a fully documented business continuity policy that broadly outlines the organization's commitment to resilience. Option B. The direct derivation and validation of business continuity strategies and plans from the business impact analysis and risk assessment findings. Option C. The comprehensive documentation of all potential threats identified in the risk register, irrespective of their likelihood or impact. Option D. The frequency and scope of business continuity awareness training provided to all personnel, regardless of their role in continuity efforts. Correct answer is B. The direct derivation and validation of business continuity strategies and plans from the business impact analysis and risk assessment findings. Explanation. The core of establishing effective business continuity objectives and planning their achievement lies in the integration of risk assessment outcomes with defined business continuity strategies. ISO 22301-2019, specifically in clauses related to objectives and planning Clause 6.2, emphasizes that objectives must be measurable, monitored, communicated, and consistent with the organization's policy. The process begins with identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities that could disrupt critical business functions. Following this, a business impact analysis, BIA, quantifies the potential consequences of these disruptions, including financial, operational, reputational, and legal impacts, and establishes recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, for critical activities. These BIA outputs directly inform the development of business continuity strategies. Strategies are then selected and implemented to meet the defined objectives, such as establishing alternate work sites, redundant data backups, or mutual aid agreements. The planning phase involves detailing the specific activities, resources, responsibilities, and timelines required to execute these strategies during a disruption. Therefore, the most effective approach to achieving business continuity objectives is to ensure that the strategies and plans are directly derived from and validated against the findings of the BIA and risk assessment, thereby creating a direct causal link between the identified risks, the desired outcomes, objectives, and the actions taken to achieve them. Question 7. During a surveillance audit of a financial services firm's ISO 22301-2019 compliant BCMS, an auditor reviews the documented business continuity plan for the primary customer service division. The plan outlines recovery time objectives, RTO, of 4 hours for critical customer support functions and specifies redundant communication channels. However, the auditor discovers through interviews and system logs that the actual restoration time for these functions during a recent, albeit minor, IT outage was 8 hours, and the secondary communication channel experienced significant degradation. The auditor also notes that the documented risk assessment for communication infrastructure resilience does not adequately address the potential failure modes of the secondary channel. What is the most appropriate classification of this finding for the auditor? Option A, minor nonconformity. Option B, observation. Option C, opportunity for improvement. Option D, major nonconformity. Correct answer is D, major nonconformity. Explanation. The auditor's primary role is to objectively assess the conformity of an organization's business continuity management system, BCMS, against the requirements of ISO 22301-2019. This involves gathering sufficient appropriate evidence through various audit techniques. When an auditor identifies a situation where the BCMS documentation, such as the Business Continuity Plan, BCP, or Incident Response Structure, is demonstrably insufficient to support the organization's stated objectives and critical activities, this constitutes a major nonconformity. A major nonconformity indicates a significant lapse in the BCMS design or implementation, potentially compromising its effectiveness in achieving business continuity. This requires a thorough investigation to understand the root cause and its systemic impact. The auditor must document this finding with clear evidence, referencing the specific clause of the standard that has been breached and the potential consequences for the organization's ability to maintain its critical functions during disruptions. The focus is on the BCMS capability to deliver its intended outcomes, not on the operational effectiveness of the business itself during a real incident, although the former directly impacts the latter. Question 8. During an audit of a company's business continuity management system, BCMS, based on ISO 22301-2019, an auditor observes that the organization conducts a high volume of business continuity exercises and tests throughout the year. What is the most significant strength an auditor would likely identify in this scenario? And conversely, what would represent a critical weakness? Option A. A strength is the high level of staff familiarity with continuity procedures. A weakness is the significant financial investment required for such frequent testing, potentially diverting resources from other critical areas. Option B. A strength is the ease of demonstrating compliance with the testing requirements of the standard. A weakness is the potential for over-reliance on documented procedures rather than practical, adaptive response capabilities. Option C. A strength is the demonstrated commitment to business continuity preparedness. A weakness is the possibility that the exercises may not accurately simulate the most critical or likely disruption scenarios identified in the risk assessment. Option D. A strength is the robust data set for evaluating BCMS effectiveness and identifying areas for improvement. A weakness is the potential for exercise fatigue and a lack of meaningful learning if exercises are not well designed or if findings are not actioned. Correct answer is D. A strength is the robust data set for evaluating BCMS effectiveness and identifying areas for improvement. A weakness is the potential for exercise fatigue and a lack of meaningful learning if exercises are not well designed or if findings are not actioned. Explanation. The auditor's role in identifying strengths and weaknesses of a business continuity management system, BCMS, involves a thorough assessment against the requirements of ISO 22301-2019. A key aspect is evaluating the organization's ability to not only plan for disruptions, but also to effectively respond, recover, and resume critical business functions. When considering a BCMS that has undergone a significant number of exercises and tests, the strength lies in the data and insights derived from these activities. Specifically, the frequency and variety of exercises provide a rich source of information for evaluating the BCMS resilience and the organization's preparedness. Analyzing the outcomes of these exercises, particularly the lessons learned and the subsequent improvements made to the BCMS, is crucial. A weakness would be a BCMS that, despite frequent exercises, shows a lack of documented, actionable improvements stemming from those exercises, or if the exercises themselves do not accurately reflect the most probable or impactful threats identified in the risk assessment. Therefore, the most significant strength an auditor would look for in a BCMS with numerous exercises is the demonstrated ability to learn and adapt, evidenced by concrete, documented improvements in response to exercise findings. Conversely, a weakness would be the absence of such demonstrable learning and adaptation, even with high exercise frequency. Question 9. An auditor is reviewing the business continuity strategy of a multinational financial services firm that operates under stringent data privacy regulations like GDPR and has critical service level agreements, SLAs, with its clients. The firm experienced a significant IT infrastructure failure last quarter. Which aspect of the business continuity strategy's effectiveness would be of primary concern to the auditor in this scenario? Option A. The strategy's demonstrated ability to restore critical financial transaction processing within the recovery time objective RTO and ensure compliance with data privacy regulations during the incident. Option B. The cost-effectiveness of the implemented business continuity solutions compared to industry benchmarks. Option C. The thoroughness of the business continuity plan documentation and the number of exercises conducted annually. Option D. The alignment of the business continuity strategy with the organization's overall risk appetite statement. The correct answer is A. The strategy's demonstrated ability to restore critical financial transaction processing within the recovery time objective RTO and ensure compliance with data privacy regulations during the incident. Explanation. The question probes the auditor's role in assessing the effectiveness of an organization's business continuity strategy against its stated objectives, particularly in the context of regulatory compliance and stakeholder confidence. A robust business continuity strategy, as envisioned by ISO 22301-2019, is not merely a set of documents but a functional framework that demonstrably supports the achievement of critical business objectives during disruptions. For an auditor, verifying that the strategy directly addresses and enables the recovery of these objectives, while also meeting any relevant legal or contractual obligations, such as data protection regulations or service-level agreements, is paramount. This involves evaluating whether the documented strategy's intended outcomes align with the organization's stated tolerance for disruption and its commitment to operational resilience. The strategy's efficacy is measured by its capacity to facilitate the resumption of essential activities within predefined timeframes, thereby safeguarding the organization's reputation, financial stability, and legal standing. The auditor's assessment must confirm that the strategy is not just theoretically sound, but practically capable of delivering these outcomes, thereby instilling confidence in its ability to maintain continuity of operations and meet external expectations. Question 10. When auditing an organization that has adopted an integrated management system approach, incorporating both ISO 22301-2019 and ISO 9001-2015, what is the primary focus for an auditor when evaluating the BCMS integration with the quality management system, particularly concerning Clause 4.1 and Clause 4.2 of ISO 22301-2019? Option A. Confirming that the business continuity objectives are a direct subset of the quality objectives, with no separate or distinct continuity-specific targets. Option B. Verifying that the processes for understanding the organization's context and the needs of interested parties are harmonized and efficiently managed across both management systems to avoid duplication and ensure consistency. Option C. Assessing the extent to which the BCMS has been certified under ISO 9001-2015, implying full integration without further audit verification. Option D. Ensuring that all quality control procedures are documented within the business continuity plan, superseding any existing quality documentation. The correct answer is B. Verifying that the processes for understanding the organization's context and the needs of interested parties are harmonized and efficiently managed across both management systems to avoid duplication and ensure consistency. Explanation. The fundamental principle of ISO 22301-2019 concerning the integration of a business continuity management system, BCMS, with other management systems such as ISO 9001, Quality Management, or ISO 27001, Information Security Management, is to leverage common elements and promote efficiency. Clause 4.1. Understanding the organization and its context, and Clause 4.2. Understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties are foundational for any management system. When auditing an organization that has integrated its BCMS with other systems, an auditor must assess how these common elements are managed to avoid duplication of effort and ensure consistency. The standard emphasizes a risk-based approach, which is also a cornerstone of quality and information security management. Therefore, an auditor would look for evidence that the processes for identifying, analyzing, and evaluating risks and opportunities related to business continuity are aligned and integrated with similar processes in other management systems. This integration allows for a more holistic understanding of organizational risks and the development of more comprehensive and effective controls. Specifically, The auditor would examine how the scope of the BCMS is defined in relation to the scopes of other integrated systems, how interested party requirements relevant to business continuity are identified and considered alongside other management system requirements, and how the overall policy and objectives are harmonized. The focus is on demonstrating that the integrated approach enhances the overall effectiveness of all managed systems by capitalizing on shared principles and processes, rather than creating separate, siloed BCMS activities. Question 11. Following a recent discovery of a previously uncatalogued critical business function within its operations, an organization's BCMS manager has requested an internal audit to assess the BCMS readiness. As an ISO 22301/2019 certified internal auditor, what is your primary objective when examining the integration of this new critical function into the existing business continuity management system? Option A. Verify that the new critical business function has been fully incorporated into the business impact analysis, risk assessment, and that corresponding continuity strategies and plans have been developed and documented. Option B. Confirm that the newly identified critical business function is compliant with all applicable local and national data privacy regulations, as mandated by the organization's legal counsel. Option C. Evaluate the effectiveness of the organization's external communication strategy in informing stakeholders about the potential impact of disruption to this new critical business function. Option D. Assess the financial resources allocated to the business continuity team to ensure they are sufficient to manage any potential disruptions related to the newly identified critical business function. The correct answer is A. Verify that the new critical business function has been fully incorporated into the business impact analysis, risk assessment, and that corresponding continuity strategies and plans have been developed and documented. Explanation. The question probes the auditor's role in verifying the effectiveness of a business continuity management system, BCMS, against the requirements of ISO 22301/2019, specifically concerning the integration of a newly identified critical business function. An internal audit's primary objective is to provide an objective assessment of the BCMS conformity and effectiveness for the organization's own management. When a new critical function is identified, the internal auditor must verify that this function has been properly incorporated into the existing BCMS. This involves checking if the business impact analysis, BIA, and risk assessment have been updated to include this function, if appropriate business continuity strategies have been developed and documented, and if these strategies have been tested and are ready for activation. The auditor's focus is on the process of integration and the resultant documented evidence within the BCMS framework. An external certification audit, conducted by a third-party certification body, would also assess this, but with the aim of granting or maintaining certification. A surveillance audit is a follow-up to a certification audit, typically focusing on specific areas or system improvements. A supplier audit would focus on the BCMS of a third-party supplier. Therefore, the most appropriate action for an internal auditor in this scenario is to ensure the comprehensive integration of the new critical function into the BCMS, which includes verifying the updated BIA, risk assessment, and the development of appropriate continuity strategies and plans. Question 12. During an audit of a financial services organization's business continuity management system, an auditor observes that the most recent management review meeting primarily focused on the technical performance of the data backup and recovery procedures following a recent minor service disruption. While the discussion covered the effectiveness of the recovery actions taken, it did not explicitly address the ongoing suitability and adequacy of the entire BCMS, nor did it consider any emerging threats or changes in the regulatory landscape that might impact the organization's business continuity strategy. Additionally, no documented actions were identified for improving the BCMS or addressing potential future vulnerabilities beyond the immediate technical aspects. What is the most significant nonconformity an auditor would likely identify regarding the management review process? Option A. Failure to ensure the review considered the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the BCMS in relation to relevant changes and opportunities for improvement. Option B. Lack of participation from all relevant departmental heads in the management review meeting. Option C. Inadequate documentation of decisions made during the review concerning resource allocation for business continuity. Option D. Overemphasis on operational performance metrics without sufficient discussion of strategic objectives. The correct answer is A. Failure to ensure the review considered the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the BCMS in relation to relevant changes and opportunities for improvement. Explanation. The management review process in ISO 22301/2019 requires the top management to review the organization's business continuity management system, BCMS, at planned intervals. The purpose is to ensure its continuing suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness. Clause 9. 3 of the standard outlines the inputs and outputs of the management review. Key inputs include the performance and effectiveness of the BCMS, changes affecting the BCMS, and opportunities for improvement. The outputs should include decisions and actions related to opportunities for improvement, any need for changes to the BCMS, and resource needs. When considering the audit of a management review meeting, an auditor must verify that the review covers all mandated inputs and that the documented outputs reflect concrete decisions and actions for improvement or change. The scenario describes a situation where the management review focused solely on incident response effectiveness and failed to address the BCMS overall suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness, nor did it consider changes affecting the BCMS or opportunities for improvement. This indicates a nonconformity with Clause 9.3. Specifically, the lack of discussion on the BCMS overall suitability and adequacy, and the absence of consideration for external changes, like new regulatory requirements or shifts in the threat landscape, and internal changes, like organizational restructuring or new technologies, means the review did not meet the comprehensive requirements of the standard. Furthermore, without identifying opportunities for improvement or addressing the need for changes to the BCMS, the review's outputs are insufficient. Therefore, the most significant nonconformity is the failure to address the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the BCMS in light of relevant changes and opportunities for improvement, which are core components of the management review input as per ISO 22301/2019, Clause 9.3.1. Question 13. When auditing an organization's information and communication technology, ICT, continuity plans in accordance with ISO 22301/2019, what is the primary criterion an auditor should use to evaluate the effectiveness of the chosen ICT continuity strategies? Option A. The cost-effectiveness and scalability of the implemented ICT continuity solutions relative to the organization's budget. Option B. The frequency and thoroughness with which ICT systems and infrastructure are updated and patched to prevent potential failures. Option C. The demonstrable capability of the strategies to meet defined recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, under simulated or actual disruptive conditions. Option D. The existence of a comprehensive documented disaster recovery plan that outlines specific steps for restoring ICT services. The correct answer is C. The demonstrable capability of the strategies to meet defined recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, under simulated or actual disruptive conditions. Explanation. The question probes the auditor's understanding of how to assess the resilience of an organization's information and communication technology, ICT, infrastructure against disruptions, specifically in the context of ISO 22301/2019. Clause 8.2.3, which deals with business continuity strategies, requires organizations to identify and evaluate options for meeting their business continuity objectives. For ICT, this involves understanding the dependencies between critical business functions and the underlying IT services, and ensuring that continuity strategies address potential failures in hardware, software, networks, and data. An auditor must verify that the organization has not only identified recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, for its ICT services, but has also established strategies that are technically feasible, economically viable, and aligned with these objectives. This includes examining the selection and implementation of backup and recovery procedures, redundant systems, failover mechanisms, and secure off-site data storage. The effectiveness of these strategies is assessed through testing and exercising. Therefore, the most crucial aspect for an auditor to evaluate regarding ICT continuity strategies is their demonstrable capability to meet the defined RTOs and RPOs under simulated or actual disruptive conditions. This capability is directly linked to the organization's ability to recover critical ICT services within the acceptable timeframes and with minimal data loss, which is the core purpose of ICT business continuity. Other options, while relevant to ICT, do not represent the primary evaluation criterion for the effectiveness of the continuity strategy itself from an auditor's perspective. The existence of a documented disaster recovery plan is a prerequisite, but its effectiveness is determined by its ability to achieve the stated recovery objectives. The frequency of system updates is a good IT practice, but not the direct measure of continuity strategy effectiveness. The cost-effectiveness of the strategy, while a consideration in strategy selection, is secondary to its ability to meet the defined continuity requirements. Question 14. During an audit of a financial services firm's business continuity management system, an auditor is reviewing the documented process for identifying interested parties and their requirements. The firm has identified its primary customers, regulatory bodies like the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, and its key technology suppliers. However, the auditor notes that the firm has not explicitly engaged with its employee representative body regarding the continuity of essential HR functions, or with local emergency services concerning potential impacts on staff safety and site accessibility during widespread disruptions. Considering the intent of ISO 22301, 2019, what is the most critical aspect the auditor should focus on to ensure the BCMS adequately addresses relevant interested party requirements? Option A. Assessing the extent to which the organization has prioritized its interested parties based on their perceived impact on business operations, focusing primarily on those with the most significant financial influence. Option B. Evaluating the frequency of communication with identified interested parties, ensuring that quarterly reports detailing BCMS performance are distributed to all relevant stakeholders. Option C. Confirming that the organization has obtained formal, signed acknowledgments from all identified interested parties regarding the BCMS ability to meet their stated requirements. Option D. Verifying that the organization has a systematic process to identify all potentially relevant interested parties and their specific, actionable requirements, including those that may not be immediately obvious or directly contractual. The correct answer is D. Verifying that the organization has a systematic process to identify all potentially relevant interested parties and their specific, actionable requirements, including those that may not be immediately obvious or directly contractual. Explanation. The core of identifying interested parties and their requirements under ISO 22301, 2019 involves a systematic process that goes beyond mere listing. Clause 4. 2. Understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties mandates that an organization must determine which interested parties are relevant to its business continuity management system, BCMS, what their requirements and expectations are, and how these will be translated into the BCMS. An auditor's role is to verify that this process is comprehensive and effective. This involves checking if the organization has a defined methodology for identifying interested parties, which might include regulatory bodies, customers, suppliers, employees, shareholders, and even the community. Furthermore, the auditor must assess how the organization gathers and documents these requirements, ensuring that they are considered during the development and maintenance of the BCMS. For instance, a critical requirement from a major client might be a specific recovery time, objective, RTO, for a vital service, which directly influences the business continuity strategy. The auditor would look for evidence of communication with these parties, documented agreements or contractual obligations, and how these external requirements are integrated into the organization's risk assessment and business impact analysis processes. The effectiveness of the BCMS is directly tied to its ability to meet these identified needs, particularly those that are legally or contractually binding. Therefore, the most effective approach for an auditor to assess the completeness and accuracy of identified interested party requirements is to review documented evidence of engagement and how these requirements are operationalized within the BCMS. Question 15. During an audit of a multinational logistics firm, Global Freight Solutions, An auditor is reviewing the organization's understanding of its context as per ISO 22300-1-2019. The firm operates in regions with varying political stability and is subject to diverse international trade regulations. The auditor observes that the documented context analysis primarily focuses on internal operational capabilities and supply chain dependencies, with limited explicit consideration of the impact of geopolitical shifts or the evolving landscape of international data privacy laws on their business continuity strategy. What is the most critical aspect for the auditor to verify regarding the firm's understanding of its context? Option A. The detailed historical performance metrics of the organization's IT infrastructure over the past 5 years. Option B. The formal approval of the context analysis report by the organization's board of directors, irrespective of its practical application. Option C. The comprehensiveness of the list of all potential external threats, regardless of their immediate relevance to the current business continuity plan. Option D. The extent to which the identified internal and external issues directly inform the scope, objectives, and activities of the business continuity management system. The correct answer is D. The extent to which the identified internal and external issues directly inform the scope, objectives, and activities of the business continuity management system. Explanation. The auditor's primary responsibility when assessing an organization's understanding of its context, as per ISO 22301-2019, is to verify that the organization has identified and considered both internal and external issues relevant to its purpose and strategic direction, and that these issues impact its ability to achieve the intended outcomes of its business continuity management system, BCMS. This involves examining how the organization has determined the scope of its BCMS and how these contextual factors inform the establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of the BCMS. Specifically, the auditor looks for evidence that the organization has considered factors such as the legal and regulatory environment, technological advancements, economic conditions, political stability, social and cultural factors, and internal aspects like organizational culture, capabilities, and information systems. The identification and understanding of these issues are foundational for conducting a robust business impact analysis, BIA, and risk assessment, which are critical components of the BCMS. Therefore, the most crucial aspect for an auditor to evaluate is the linkage between the identified context and the subsequent BCMS activities, ensuring that the BCMS is appropriately designed and implemented to address the specific challenges and opportunities presented by the organization's environment. Question 16. When formulating an audit plan for an organization's ISO 22301-2019 compliant business continuity management system, what is the most critical factor an auditor must prioritize to ensure comprehensive coverage and relevance, considering the organization's operational context and regulatory landscape? Option A. Prioritizing audit activities based on the availability of internal audit resources and the convenience of the audit schedule, irrespective of identified risks. Option B. Focusing solely on the documented business continuity policy and objectives, assuming all other aspects are adequately covered by internal quality assurance processes. Option C. Integrating the findings from the organization's latest business impact analysis and risk assessment, alongside relevant statutory and regulatory obligations impacting critical business functions. Option D. Evaluating the effectiveness of communication channels between departments, with minimal consideration for the technical recovery capabilities or the business impact analysis results. The correct answer is C. Integrating the findings from the organization's latest business impact analysis and risk assessment, alongside relevant statutory and regulatory obligations impacting critical business functions. Explanation. The development of an audit plan for a business continuity management system, BCMS, under ISO 22301-2019 requires a systematic approach that considers various factors to ensure the audit's effectiveness and efficiency. The plan must be based on a thorough understanding of the organization's context, its BCMS scope, the results of previous audits, and the specific objectives of the current audit. Key inputs include the organization's risk assessment and business impact analysis BIA, which identify critical business functions, and their recovery time objectives RTO, and recovery point objectives RPO. The audit plan should also consider the organization's stated policies, objectives, and the requirements of ISO 22301 itself. Furthermore, relevant legal and regulatory requirements that the organization must comply with, such as data protection laws or industry-specific regulations, need to be integrated into the audit scope and criteria. The auditor must also factor in the maturity of the BCMS, the availability of resources, both for the audit team and the auditee, and any significant changes within the organization or its operating environment since the last audit. The audit plan should define the audit criteria, scope, objectives, schedule, and the resources required, ensuring that it is comprehensive and addresses the most significant risks and opportunities for improvement within the BCMS. Prioritization of audit activities should be informed by the criticality of business processes, the effectiveness of implemented controls, and the potential impact of disruptions. Question 17. An ISO 22301, 2019 audit uncovered a nonconformity where the organization's incident response team lacked documented evidence of participation in recent simulated exercises, leading to delays in activating the crisis management plan during a tabletop exercise. The auditee proposed a corrective action to schedule one additional simulation exercise per quarter and to update the training register. As an auditor, what is the most critical aspect to verify regarding the effectiveness of this corrective action? Option A. If the frequency of simulation exercises has increased from 1 per year to 4 per year as stated in the corrective action plan. Option B. Whether the updated training register accurately reflects participation in the new quarterly simulations, and if subsequent simulated exercises demonstrate improved response times and adherence to the crisis management plan. Option C. If the proposed additional quarterly simulation exercises have been added to the annual audit schedule for internal review. Option D. Whether the updated training register has been distributed to all relevant departmental heads for their awareness. The correct answer is B. Whether the updated training register accurately reflects participation in the new quarterly simulations, and if subsequent simulated exercises demonstrate improved response times and adherence to the crisis management plan. Explanation. The auditor's role in verifying corrective actions for nonconformities identified during an ISO 22301-2019 audit is crucial for ensuring the effectiveness of the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS. When a nonconformity is raised, the auditee is expected to implement corrective actions to address the root cause and prevent recurrence. The auditor's verification process goes beyond simply checking if an action was taken. It involves assessing whether the implemented action has effectively resolved the nonconformity and whether it has been integrated into the BCMS to prevent similar issues. This includes examining evidence of the corrective action, evaluating its impact on the BCMS, and confirming that the root cause analysis was thorough. For instance, if a nonconformity related to an outdated business impact analysis, BIA, was identified, the auditor would not only check if a new BIA was conducted, but also verify if the findings of the new BIA have been incorporated into the updated business continuity plans, BCP, and if the process for reviewing and updating the BIA has been improved. The auditor must ensure that the corrective action addresses the systemic issues, not just the symptom, and that it contributes to the overall improvement of the BCMS as intended by the standard. The verification should confirm that the implemented action has indeed eliminated the nonconformity and its potential for recurrence, aligning with the PDCA, Plan Do Check Act, cycle, inherent in management system standards. Question 18. During an audit of a multinational logistics firm's business continuity management system, an auditor is reviewing evidence related to Clause 5.3 of ISO 22301-2019. The firm has documented a comprehensive BCMS structure with clear reporting lines for business continuity activities. However, during interviews with operational staff in a regional distribution center, it becomes apparent that while job descriptions mention general responsibilities, the specific delegated authorities for initiating certain response procedures during a localized disruption are not widely understood by those directly involved. What is the auditor's primary concern regarding the firm's adherence to the requirements of Clause 5.3? Option A. The auditor should focus solely on the top management's understanding of BCMS roles, not operational staff. Option B. The documented roles and responsibilities are insufficient to ensure effective BCMS operation during an incident. Option C. The firm's reliance on informal communication channels for BCMS responsibilities violates the standard. Option D. The firm has failed to establish a formal business continuity policy, which is a prerequisite for defining roles. Correct answer is B. The documented roles and responsibilities are insufficient to ensure effective BCMS operation during an incident. Explanation. The question probes the auditor's responsibility in verifying the establishment and communication of roles, responsibilities, and authorities within an organization's business continuity management system, BCMS, as per ISO 22301, 2019. Clause 5. 3. Organizational roles, responsibilities, and authorities mandates that top management ensure these are defined, communicated, and understood throughout the organization. An auditor's role is to confirm that this has been effectively done. This involves examining documentation such as organizational charts, job descriptions, BCMS charters, and internal communications that clearly delineate who is responsible for specific BCMS activity, who has the authority to make decisions during a disruption, and how this information is disseminated. The auditor would look for evidence that these roles are not only documented, but also actively understood by personnel at various levels, which can be assessed through interviews and observation during site visits. The focus is on the systematic establishment and clear communication of these critical elements to ensure the BCMS functions effectively during an incident. Question 19. During an audit of a financial services organization's business continuity management system, an auditor is reviewing the procedures for activating the Business Continuity Plan, BCP, following a significant cyber attack that disrupted critical online trading platforms. The auditor wishes to assess the effectiveness of the personnel's understanding and application of the activation protocols. Which of the following interview techniques would yield the most comprehensive and objective evidence regarding the BCP activation process? Option A. Request the IT security manager to confirm that the BCP was activated according to the documented steps in the BCP manual. Option B. Ask the IT security manager to describe the sequence of events that led to the BCP activation, including the specific decision criteria used and any deviations from the documented procedure. Option C. Ask the IT security manager to provide a copy of the BCP activation logbook for review. Option D. Inquire about the total number of personnel involved in the BCP activation process and their respective roles as outlined in the BCP. The correct answer is B. Ask the IT security manager to describe the sequence of events that led to the BCP activation, including the specific decision criteria used and any deviations from the documented procedure. Explanation. The auditor's role during an ISO 22301, 2019 audit is to gather objective evidence to determine conformity with the standard. When interviewing personnel regarding the Business Continuity Plan, BCP, activation process, the auditor must move beyond simple confirmation of procedures. The goal is to understand the practical application, decision-making rationale, and the effectiveness of the implemented controls. Simply asking if the BCP was activated as documented in the plan does not probe the depth of understanding or identify potential deviations or improvements. A more effective approach involves asking open-ended questions that encourage detailed responses and reveal the thought process behind actions taken. For instance, inquiring about the specific triggers for activation, the individuals involved in the decision-making, the rationale for choosing a particular response strategy, and any challenges encountered during activation provides richer evidence. This allows the auditor to assess not only whether the documented process was followed, but also the underlying competence and situational awareness of the personnel. Understanding the why and how of the activation, not just the what, is crucial for evaluating the BCMS effectiveness and identifying opportunities for enhancement. This approach aligns with the principles of evidence-based conformity assessment and the auditor's responsibility to provide assurance on the BCMS ability to achieve its intended outcomes. Question 20. During a business continuity management system audit against ISO 22301-2019, an auditor observes that a critical data restoration process, simulated during a tabletop exercise for the Aurora project, consistently failed to meet its documented recovery time objective RTO of 4 hours, with actual recovery taking 5 hours. The organization's internal review identified the root cause as an outdated software patch on the backup server. The organization has since updated the software and retested the restoration process, achieving it within 5 hours. What is the auditor's primary responsibility in verifying the effectiveness of the corrective action taken by the organization in this scenario? Option A. Document the nonconformity as minor, as the deviation was only 5 hours and the organization has shown intent to correct. Option B. Confirm that the updated software patch has been successfully applied to the backup server and that subsequent testing demonstrates the restoration process now consistently meets the RTO. Option C. Accept the organization's internal review and retest results without further verification, assuming the corrective action is sufficient. Option D. Recommend that the organization revise the RTO for the Aurora project to align with the observed recovery time, thereby reducing the nonconformity. Correct answer is B. Confirm that the updated software patch has been successfully applied to the backup server and that subsequent testing demonstrates the restoration process now consistently meets the RTO. Explanation. The core of effective nonconformity and corrective action management within ISO 22301-2019 lies in understanding the root cause and implementing sustainable solutions. When an auditor identifies a deviation from the standard, such as a critical business function's recovery time objective, RTO, being consistently exceeded during a simulated exercise without a documented justification or a revised plan, this represents a nonconformity. The process for addressing this nonconformity involves several steps. First, the auditor must accurately record the details of the nonconformity, specifying the clause of the standard that has not been met and providing objective evidence. Following this, the organization is required to investigate the root cause of the nonconformity. This investigation is crucial. It goes beyond superficial reasons to uncover the underlying systemic issues. For instance, if the RTO was missed due to an outdated recovery procedure or a lack of adequately trained personnel, these would be root causes. Once the root cause is identified, appropriate corrective actions must be determined and implemented. These actions should be designed to eliminate the root cause and prevent recurrence. Simply updating the procedure might be a corrective action, but if the root cause was insufficient training, then developing and delivering training would also be a necessary corrective action. The effectiveness of these actions must then be verified. The auditor's role includes assessing whether the implemented actions have indeed addressed the root cause and if the nonconformity is unlikely to reappear. This verification might involve reviewing updated documentation, observing new processes, or conducting further tests. The objective is to ensure the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS, is robust and capable of achieving its intended outcomes, thereby enhancing organizational resilience. The prompt is asking about the auditor's responsibility in verifying the effectiveness of corrective actions for a missed RTO in a simulation. The auditor must confirm that the actions taken by the organization have genuinely resolved the issue and prevent it from happening again. This involves checking that the root cause has been addressed and that the BCMS has been improved as a result. Question 21. When auditing an organization's business continuity risk assessment process according to ISO 22301-2019 and focusing on the evaluation of likelihood for a cyber attack targeting proprietary research data, what primary factor should an auditor scrutinize to validate the organization's low likelihood rating for this specific threat? Option A. The subjective opinion of the IT security team lead regarding the general sophistication of external hackers. Option B. The organization's documented history of successful defenses against similar cyber attack vectors and the absence of known vulnerabilities exploited by current threat actors targeting their industry. Option C. The organization's investment in cybersecurity insurance coverage, which is a strong indicator of perceived risk. Option D. The average number of reported data breaches across the entire technology sector globally in the past fiscal year. The correct answer is B. The organization's documented history of successful defenses against similar cyber attack vectors and the absence of known vulnerabilities exploited by current threat actors targeting their industry. Explanation. The fundamental principle of risk assessment within ISO 22301-2019 is to understand the potential consequences of disruptions and the likelihood of those disruptions occurring. When assessing the likelihood of an event impacting a critical business function, an auditor must consider the frequency and probability of that event occurring. This involves examining historical data, industry trends, and expert judgment. For instance, if a critical IT system relies on a single power source in a region prone to frequent electrical grid failures, the likelihood of a disruption to that system due to power loss would be considered high. Conversely, an event with a very low historical occurrence and no foreseeable contributing factors would be assessed as having a low likelihood. The auditor's role is to ensure that the organization's assessment is objective and considers all relevant factors that could influence the probability of an incident. This assessment directly informs the selection of appropriate business continuity strategies and the prioritization of resources. The objective is not to assign a precise numerical probability, but to categorize the likelihood into meaningful bands that reflect the inherent risk. This forms the basis for understanding the overall risk exposure and the urgency of implementing mitigation measures. Question 22. An auditor is reviewing the communication strategy of a multinational logistics firm following a significant cyber attack that disrupted its primary booking system. The firm's documented strategy outlines the use of email for all internal updates, a public relations firm to manage external media inquiries, and a dedicated hotline for critical clients. However, during the incident, many employees reported not receiving timely updates due to email server overload, and critical clients expressed frustration with long wait times on the hotline. Which of the following elements, if absent from the firm's documented strategy, would represent the most significant deficiency according to ISO 22301, 2019, indicating a failure to address communication effectiveness during a disruption? Option A detailed schedule for conducting post-incident communication reviews and updating the strategy. Option B, glossary of standard communication templates for various incident types, including pre-approved messages. Option C, provisions for escalating communication channels and diversifying methods to ensure information dissemination during system failures, alongside a feedback mechanism for stakeholders. Option D, a clear designation of responsibility for approving all external communications released to the public. Correct answer is C. Provisions for escalating communication channels and diversifying methods to ensure information dissemination during system failures, alongside a feedback mechanism for stakeholders. Explanation: the effectiveness of a business continuity communication strategy during a crisis hinges on its ability to provide timely, accurate, and relevant information to all stakeholders. ISO 22301, 2019, specifically in Clause 8.4, emphasizes the need for an organization to establish, implement, and maintain communication channels and procedures. These should cover both internal and external communication. For an auditor, evaluating the communication strategy involves assessing its comprehensiveness, clarity, and adaptability to different incident types and stakeholder groups. The strategy must define who communicates what, to whom, when, and how. Crucially, it needs to consider the potential for misinformation or information overload and establish mechanisms to manage these. A robust strategy will also include provisions for two-way communication, allowing for feedback and clarification, and will be tested and reviewed as part of the overall business continuity plan. Considering the scenario, the auditor is evaluating the documented strategy against these principles. The most comprehensive and adaptable approach, which aligns with the standard's intent, is one that outlines clear responsibilities, diverse communication methods, and a process for updating information based on the evolving situation and stakeholder needs. This ensures that critical information reaches the right people through appropriate channels, fostering trust and enabling effective response and recovery. Question 23. Consider a scenario where an organization's critical customer relationship management (CRM) system relies on a shared database server, which in turn depends on a specific network segment for data transfer and a specialized IT support team for its maintenance. During an audit of the BCMS, what specific aspect of interdependency analysis would an auditor prioritize to ensure the robustness of the business continuity strategy for the CRM function? Option A, confirming that the organization has identified all potential third-party vendors providing services to the CRM system, regardless of their criticality. Option B, verifying that the documented dependencies between the CRM system, the database server, the network segment, and the IT support team are explicitly mapped, and their impact on the CRM's RTO is understood. Option C. Assessing the frequency of software updates applied to the CRM system, assuming this is the primary driver of its operational resilience. Option D. Evaluating the number of employees trained on the CRM system, as a larger pool of users implies greater inherent resilience. The correct answer is B. Verifying that the documented dependencies between the CRM system, the database server, the network segment, and the IT support team are explicitly mapped, and their impact on the CRM's RTO is understood. Explanation: the core of understanding interdependencies within a business continuity management system, BCMS. As per ISO 22301/2019, lies in identifying how different organizational functions, processes, and resources rely on each other to operate. An auditor must assess whether the organization has systematically mapped these relationships to ensure that the failure of one component does not cascade into an unmanageable disruption of critical activities. This involves examining the outputs of one activity serving as inputs for another, the shared reliance on specific infrastructure, like IT systems, power, or communication networks, and the human resources or specialized skills required for multiple functions. When evaluating interdependencies, an auditor looks for evidence of documented dependencies, analysis of their impact on recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, and the incorporation of these findings into business continuity strategies and plans. The most effective way to demonstrate a thorough understanding of these connections is by illustrating how a disruption to a foundational element, such as the primary data center, would impact downstream processes like customer service fulfillment, financial transaction processing, and supply chain management. This requires tracing the flow of information and materials, identifying critical dependencies on shared services, and understanding the sequence in which activities must be restored to achieve overall business resilience. Question 24. During an audit of a financial services organization's business continuity management system, an auditor is reviewing the integration between the business impact analysis (BIA) and the subsequent strategy development phase. The BIA identified critical business functions with defined maximum tolerable periods of disruption (MTPOD) and required recovery time objectives (RTO). However, the documented continuity strategies appear to be generic and do not demonstrably align with the specific RTOs and MTPOD established for these critical functions. What is the primary deficiency an auditor would likely identify in this scenario concerning the ISO 22301/2019 Business Continuity Management Lifecycle? Option A. Lack of a documented business continuity policy that addresses strategic alignment. Option B. Insufficient detail in the business impact analysis regarding resource dependencies. Option C. Overly complex business continuity plans that do not reflect the identified RTOs. Option D. Inadequate linkage between BIA outputs and the selection and design of continuity strategies. The correct answer is D. Inadequate linkage between BIA outputs and the selection and design of continuity strategies. Explanation: the ISO 22301/2019 standard mandates a cyclical approach to business continuity management, BCM, often referred to as the business continuity management lifecycle. This lifecycle begins with understanding the organization and its context, followed by establishing the business continuity policy and objectives. A critical phase is the business impact analysis (BIA) and risk assessment, which inform the development of business continuity strategies. These strategies are then translated into detailed business continuity plans, BCP. The implementation of these plans involves resource allocation, training, and awareness programs. Crucially, the standard emphasizes the ongoing nature of BCM through regular testing, exercising, and maintenance of the plans, and the overall BCMS. Following testing or a real incident, a review and improvement process is initiated, feeding back into the earlier stages of the life cycle to ensure the BCMS remains relevant and effective. An auditor's role is to verify that each of these phases is adequately addressed and integrated. Specifically, when assessing the effectiveness of the BCM lifecycle, an auditor must confirm that the outputs of one phase correctly inform and influence the subsequent phases, ensuring a cohesive and robust BCMS. For instance, The findings from a BIA and risk assessment directly dictate the selection and design of appropriate continuity strategies and the content of the BCPs. Without this clear linkage, the BCMS would be fragmented and less capable of achieving its intended outcomes during a disruption. Therefore, the auditor's focus is on the interdependencies and the flow of information and decisions throughout the lifecycle. Question 25. During a business continuity exercise simulating a critical data center outage, an auditor observes the initial activation of the business continuity plan. The auditor's primary objective at this stage is to assess the effectiveness of which aspect of the plan's implementation. Option A. The efficiency of the post-incident data recovery procedures and the restoration of critical IT services. Option B. The effectiveness of the crisis communication strategy in managing public perception and media inquiries. Option C. The financial impact assessment and the calculation of business interruption losses incurred during the event. Option D. The accuracy and timeliness of initial communication and notification cascades to all relevant internal and external stakeholders. Correct answer is D. The accuracy and timeliness of initial communication and notification cascades to all relevant internal and external stakeholders. Explanation. The auditor's role in observing the business continuity plan, BCP, activation during a simulated incident is to verify the effectiveness of the plan's implementation and the preparedness of the personnel involved. This involves not just noting what happens, but also understanding the underlying decision-making processes and adherence to established procedures. Observing the initial response, specifically the communication protocols and the cascade of notifications, is paramount. This includes verifying that all designated personnel are informed within the stipulated timeframes and that the information conveyed is accurate and actionable. Furthermore, the auditor must assess the clarity of roles and responsibilities during the activation phase. This involves confirming that individuals understand their assigned tasks and are executing them appropriately. The auditor should also look for evidence of deviation from the documented plan, and if deviations occur, understand the reasons and their impact on the overall continuity objective. The initial communication and notification process directly reflects the foundational elements of the BCP's activation, impacting subsequent response phases. Therefore, the auditor's primary focus during this initial observation is the accuracy and timeliness of these critical first steps. Question 26. Global Trust Bank, a financial services organization, is undergoing an audit of its Business Continuity Management System, BCMS, in accordance with ISO 22301-2019. The bank's Business Continuity Plan, BCP, outlines a tiered recovery strategy for a cyber attack that compromises its primary data center. The plan specifies the restoration of critical customer-facing applications within a 4-hour RTO and the full recovery of all systems, including non-critical ones, within a 24-hour RTO. The bank's audit team needs to select the most suitable testing method to validate the BCP's effectiveness in achieving these objectives during a simulated cyber attack scenario that mirrors a real-world event. Which testing methodology would best assess the bank's ability to meet its defined recovery time and recovery point objectives in this context? Option A, tabletop exercise. Option B, functional exercise. Option C, full-scale exercise. Option D, simulation exercise. The correct answer is D, simulation exercise. Explanation. The scenario describes a situation where a financial institution, Global Trust Bank, is testing its business continuity plan, BCP, following a localized cyber attack that has rendered its primary data center inoperable. The BCP mandates a phased approach to recovery, starting with the activation of a secondary data center and the restoration of critical customer-facing services within a 4-hour window. Subsequently, the plan requires the full operationalization of the backup site, including all non-critical systems, within 24 hours. The audit objective is to verify the effectiveness of the BCP in meeting these recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, under simulated conditions. A simulation exercise is the most appropriate testing methodology for this specific scenario. Simulations are designed to replicate real-world disruptions in a controlled environment, allowing organizations to test their response procedures, decision-making processes, and the functionality of their recovery solutions without impacting actual operations. In this case, The cyber attack scenario directly aligns with the purpose of a simulation, which can realistically model the sequence of events, the activation of backup systems, and the recovery of critical and non-critical functions. A tabletop exercise, while useful for discussing roles and responsibilities, would not adequately test the technical recovery processes or the actual time taken to restore services. A full-scale exercise, which involves activating all resources and personnel as if a real disaster had occurred, would be overly disruptive and resource-intensive for testing the impact of a localized cyber attack on specific data center operations. A functional exercise focuses on testing a specific capability or function, which is a component of a simulation, but not the overall approach needed to validate the entire BCP's effectiveness in this context. Therefore, a simulation provides the necessary balance of realism and controlled testing to assess Global Trust Bank's BCP against its stated RTOs and RPOs for this type of incident. Question 27. During an audit of a global logistics firm's business continuity management system, an auditor is reviewing the documented impact analysis for a critical shipping route disruption. The analysis details potential lost revenue, increased operational costs for rerouting, and negative customer feedback. However, it does not explicitly quantify the potential for contractual penalties due to delayed deliveries or the long-term erosion of market share resulting from a damaged reputation for reliability. Which aspect of impact assessment, as per ISO 22301-2019, is most likely underdeveloped in the firm's current approach? Option A. The firm's insufficient consideration of the interdependencies between financial and operational impacts. Option B. The firm's overemphasis on financial metrics at the expense of operational resilience planning. Option C. The firm's inadequate identification of all potential operational disruptions to critical shipping routes. Option D. The firm's failure to fully integrate potential legal and regulatory consequences with its reputational impact assessment. Correct answer is D. The firm's failure to fully integrate potential legal and regulatory consequences with its reputational impact assessment. Explanation. The core of assessing impact categories in ISO 22301-2019 involves understanding how disruptions affect an organization across various dimensions. Financial impact encompasses direct monetary losses, lost revenue, increased costs, and potential fines. Operational impact relates to the disruption of critical activities, inability to deliver products or services, and degradation of performance. Reputational impact involves damage to brand image, loss of customer trust, and negative media attention. Legal and regulatory impact includes non-compliance with laws, contractual breaches, and potential litigation. When evaluating a scenario, an auditor must consider the interconnectedness of these categories. For instance, a prolonged operational disruption can lead to significant financial losses, and consequently, damage to reputation and potential legal repercussions if service-level agreements are breached. The auditor's role is to verify that the organization has identified and assessed these impacts comprehensively, ensuring that the business continuity strategy and plans are aligned with the determined criticality of activities and the potential consequences of their disruption. The most critical consideration for an auditor is to ensure that the organization's impact analysis methodology prioritizes the most severe consequences across all categories, especially when a single event could trigger cascading effects. Therefore, the most encompassing and accurate assessment would be one that explicitly acknowledges the potential for interdependencies and cascading effects across all four defined impact categories, as this reflects a mature understanding of business continuity risk. Question 28. During an audit of a financial services firm's business continuity management system, BCMS, based on ISO 22301-2019, an auditor observes that the organization relies heavily on a comprehensive business interruption insurance policy to cover potential losses from a prolonged IT system failure. The firm has a detailed insurance policy document, but limited documented operational recovery plans for critical data processing functions beyond what the insurer might provide as part of a claim. What is the primary implication of this observation for the auditor's assessment of the BCMS conformity with the standard? Option A. The organization may have a significant gap in its ability to respond to and recover from disruptions, as insurance is a financial mitigation tool and not a substitute for operational resilience capabilities. Option B. The auditor should verify that the insurance policy's coverage aligns with the organization's identified critical business functions and their recovery time objectives. Option C. The organization's focus on insurance indicates a mature understanding of external dependencies, a crucial element for effective business continuity planning. Option D. The organization's reliance on insurance demonstrates a proactive approach to financial risk management, which is a key component of overall business continuity. The correct answer is A. The organization may have a significant gap in its ability to respond to and recover from disruptions, as insurance is a financial mitigation tool and not a substitute for operational resilience capabilities. Explanation. The core principle of business continuity is to ensure an organization can continue to operate at acceptable levels during and after a disruptive incident. While insurance is a vital financial recovery tool, it is not a substitute for robust business continuity planning and response capabilities. The purpose of a business continuity management system, BCMS, is to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve a framework for managing disruptive incidents. Insurance primarily addresses the financial consequences of an incident by compensating for losses, whereas a BCMS focuses on the operational resilience and the ability to perform critical business functions. Therefore, an auditor assessing an organization's BCMS against ISO 22300-1-2019 would evaluate how insurance complements, rather than replaces, the organization's own preparedness and response mechanisms. The auditor would look for evidence that the organization understands the limitations of its insurance policies and has implemented controls and procedures to manage the impact of disruptions regardless of insurance coverage. This includes having documented recovery strategies, maintaining essential resources, and conducting exercises to test these capabilities. The existence of comprehensive insurance without corresponding operational readiness signifies a gap in the BCMS. Question 29. During an audit of a financial services firm's business continuity management system, it was noted that while numerous training sessions were conducted and plans were updated quarterly, the actual recovery time for a critical transaction processing system during a recent simulated exercise exceeded the documented recovery time objective RTO by 30%. Considering the intent of ISO 22301-2019, which of the following metrics would be the most direct indicator of the BCMS effectiveness in ensuring operational resilience under disruptive conditions? Option A. The number of business continuity exercises conducted annually, categorized by type e.g., tabletop, simulation, full scale. Option B. The number of personnel who have completed the basic business continuity awareness training module. Option C. The percentage of critical business functions that have had their RTOs and RPOs validated through testing. Option D. The frequency of updates to business continuity plans and associated documentation. The correct answer is C. The percentage of critical business functions that have had their RTOs and RPOs validated through testing. Explanation. The effectiveness of a business continuity management system, BCMS, is evaluated through various metrics. Clause 9. 1 of ISO 22301-2019, Monitoring, Measurement, Analysis, and Evaluation, mandates that the organization shall determine what needs to be monitored and measured, the methods for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation needed to ensure the validity of the results, when the monitoring and measuring shall be performed, and when the results from monitoring and measurement shall be analyzed and evaluated. The objective is to ensure that the BCMS is performing as intended and achieving its stated objectives, such as meeting recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, during an incident. Metrics should reflect the operational readiness, responsiveness, and resilience of the organization. For instance, tracking the number of business continuity plan, BCP tests conducted and their pass rates, the time taken to restore critical functions after a simulated disruption, and the number of identified risks that have been mitigated are all important indicators. Furthermore, the analysis of these metrics should inform decisions regarding the improvement of the BCMS, identifying gaps in areas requiring further development or resources. The ultimate goal is to demonstrate that the BCMS is achieving its intended outcomes and contributing to the organization's ability to continue its activities at an acceptable level following a disruptive incident. The question, focuses on identifying the most appropriate metric that directly reflects the BCMS performance in achieving its core purpose of maintaining critical operations. Question 30. An auditor is reviewing the operational planning and control aspects of a financial services firm's business continuity management system, BCMS, following ISO 22300-1-2019. The firm has identified a critical client onboarding process that must resume within 4 hours of a disruptive event. The documented business continuity plan outlines a manual data entry procedure as a temporary solution. During the audit, the auditor observes that while the manual procedure is documented, the designated staff members have not undergone regular hands-on practice sessions for this specific recovery task, and the necessary physical forms for manual entry are not readily accessible in the designated alternate work location. What is the most significant finding related to the operational control of this critical activity? Option A. The documented manual data entry procedure lacks demonstrable operational readiness due to insufficient practical training and inadequate availability of essential recovery resources. Option B. The recovery time objective of 4 hours for client onboarding may be unrealistic given the complexity of manual data entry. Option C. The alternate work location has not been formally certified as compliant with relevant data privacy regulations for handling client information during a disruption. Option D. The business continuity plan's reliance on manual data entry for a critical process indicates a potential gap in technological resilience. The correct answer is A. The documented manual data entry procedure lacks demonstrable operational readiness due to insufficient practical training and inadequate availability of essential recovery resources. Explanation: the core of operational planning and control within ISO 22300-1-2019 lies in establishing and maintaining processes that ensure the continuity of critical activities. Clause 8. 2. Business continuity objectives and planning to achieve them. And Clause 8. 3. Business continuity capabilities are paramount here. Specifically, the standard mandates the implementation of business continuity strategies and solutions that are suitable, cost-effective, and capable of meeting the organization's defined business continuity objectives. An auditor must verify that these implemented solutions are not merely theoretical, but are actively operationalized and integrated into the day-to-day functioning of the organization to support the recovery of critical activities within their specified recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO. This involves ensuring that the documented procedures and plans are consistently followed, resources are allocated appropriately, and the effectiveness of these controls is regularly assessed and improved. The auditor's role is to confirm that the organization has moved beyond mere documentation to demonstrable operational capability.